I said a quick prayer and anointed my forehead with holy oil. You never can be too careful when you deal with fugitives known to be in cults. Getting in the front door of the single-family home wasn't all that difficult. I parked my car like I belonged there, got out, and quickly picked the front door. The marshal had run a canine unit here last night, and it couldn't smell any explosives or traps. The dog didn't care to go inside, however, which often means something evil was lurking inside. Not just illegal, but evil. I only had the weapons and equipment I could carry on me inconspicuously. Arizona in June made that fairly difficult. I was dressed in shorts and a t-shirt. However, because it was hot, backpacks were fairly common right now. People didn't want to even carry their wallets or keys in clothes that they were sweating in. The ambient temperature outside was 111 degrees. Fortunately, the house was kept quite cold, about 65 degrees. The electric bill must be astronomical to keep it 50 degrees cooler on the inside. I had taken my backpack and started wearing it on the front. The compartment was designed to open so I could easily access the inside. The backpack had a level 3 polyurethane plate designed to stop rifle rounds, as long as they were not armor-piercing. The plate was now protecting my front. I pulled a flap out of the bag and threw it over my head like I would a cape and snapped it into place. This flap was 3A armor, rated for pistol rounds. That plate was protecting my back. I put 1/4-inch steel shin guards on. I had paid a Renaissance armorer to make them custom just for me. I pulled my custom Colt Anaconda from the backpack's main pouch. It had a red dot optic, a combination laser light camera on it. It was loaded with my special hand loads, a 400-grain silver bullet that came out of the barrel at about 950 feet per second. Don't ask me why silver bullets work extremely well in my line of work, but trust me, they do. They work extremely well. I decided to check my phone to see if the Bluetooth was still recording and transmitting okay. "Hey, Reed," I asked, "what's the city charging to keep the AC running this much?" "Let me look," she replied. "It's only about $100 a month," she said, surprised. That was almost physically impossible. It should be as much as $600 a month at this temperature in the middle of the Arizona desert. It was naturally much colder here than it should be. At least I knew that the occult was indeed somewhere close. The abandoned house wasn't so scary on the ground level. It looked pretty much like a single-family home. I examined all of the doors on the ground level. They had all been locked from the inside with double-keyed deadbolts. The keys were missing. I found a few forks in the kitchen and then jammed all of the external doors closed with the forks. I had practiced how to kick the fork out if I needed to get through the door like that in a real hurry. But in the meantime, they would prevent anyone from sneaking up on me. I stood there at the back door now, my Colt Anaconda at the ready. I listened, smelled, and I watched. "What the hell are you doing?" asked Reed in my earpiece. I ignored her. "Hey, Harold, are you listening?" Reed asked again. "Yes," I replied quietly. "Please be quiet," I added. "Okay, so what are you doing?" Reed insisted. "Don't worry, Dad. Nobody else can hear me." "But they can hear me when I answer," I texted. "You worry too much," said Reed in a dismissive voice. "Besides, U.S. Marshals were here 2 days ago and they didn't find anything. Why do you think they missed something?" "Because their dog wouldn't go inside," I replied quietly. Reed was a curious sort. I couldn't fault her for that. My adopted daughter was a typical preteen, barely able to drive, although watching her old man break into the homes of cult leaders was typical only for us, I thought to myself. Because the dog wouldn't step foot in the house, I think it had more sense than the humans. No dog wants to investigate the occult, I replied softly, no matter how well trained. I'm listening to the house to see what sounds it normally makes. That way, if someone tried to sneak up on me, I can hear them, I explained. It must have made sense because Reed stopped asking random questions. When did Eric last live here? I texted Reed. 6 years ago, but someone matching his description was seen entering the house last week, replied Reed in my earbud. How's the video feed? I texted. Perfect, Reed replied. It should be. The transmitter I was wearing was a pretty stout one, and I had attached a relay to the lightning rod that most houses have when the people inside are performing quote-unquote rituals. After I had spent enough time in the house to familiarize myself with its normal sounds and odors, it was time to search the parts of the house nobody was meant to find. Everything in the house was pretty normal. It was tidy and everything in its place. It looked like somewhere a family of 4 had lived, until they just all disappeared 3 weeks ago. The creepiest thing about their disappearance was that nobody noticed. Their jobs reported them missing, not loved ones or relatives or neighbors. The husband was an elementary school teacher, the mother an interior decorator. The 2 kids were in high school. I approached the girls' room. The closet in her room was backed up against the closet in the brothers' room. I carefully estimated the size of the closet. There was indeed a space that was unaccounted for. The closets were smaller than they should be. That's when the dog appeared. Fiercely loyal and starving, the dog came out of the closet and attacked. Predictably, it bit my left leg and deeply sunk its teeth into my steel shin guards. This wasn't my first cult guard dog. One shot from the anaconda put the dog out of its misery. The bullet had about $45 worth of silver in it, which was fitting for a .45 Colt plus P round. Reed was breathing more heavily than I was. Wow, too bad about that dog, she said. I could tell she was a little upset. Cults raise these dogs to be insane and mean. They feed it stuff that you wouldn't believe. They're not retrainable. It's sad, I said. I was a dog person before I started this line of work. These bastards didn't have any sympathy for me before this. Now, even less. How did the police miss that dog? She asked. It probably wasn't here 2 days ago, I concluded. So someone was here and might still be here? She said. The dog had indeed come from a trap door in the closet. No doubt it was part of the hidden passage. With weapon light pointed into the closet, I very carefully checked for traps. I didn't expect to find any here. The dog would be prone to setting them off. As expected, I didn't find any and removed the clothes from the closet. Indeed, the carpet in the closet had seen enough traffic to show people coming in and out. Once you could see in the closet and knew what it looked like, for the dog's pen was directly on top of the trap door in the floor. Here's where the fun begins. I opened the trap door a crack, and the smell of rotting flesh rushed from the smallest opening to be almost overpowering. I closed the door. I looked around in the closet and found a hazard mask and a plastic suit. I put the hazard mask on. It had a visor on it, but I ignored that. I ignored the plastic suit, but I put surgical gloves on. I always keep them handy. How did you know that mask would be there? Asked Reed. People leave things lying around that you need to break into their places, because they also need these things to live in their own houses, I said matter of fact. Ugh, replied Reed. I put the bread spread on top of the dog's body, then turned my attention to the trap door. There was a ladder. With the gunshot from my .45 Colt revolver, it was a safe bet that I wasn't sneaking around anymore. Instead of going down the ladder, I waited there with my anaconda pointed at the entrance for about 15 minutes. I wasn't in any hurry. I was now satisfied that I had outweighted any potential bad guy who might be waiting to ambush me at the bottom of the ladder. The shaft went down about 30 feet, directly into the ground. Just before I went down the shaft, I made a note to myself to get a small camera drone that could go down that shaft before me to see if there was anything down there. I holstered the anaconda and began the slow descent. The shaft was rather claustrophobic, but I managed to get to the bottom. When I reached the bottom, my back was to the open shaft, naturally. I turned and unholstered my revolver. With the weapon light on, I proceeded down the hallway. It was barely 5 feet wide and 6 feet tall. This was not the type of basement normal people put in their suburban home. I got to a sturdy, locked steel door. There was an occult symbol on the arch of the door. Bingo, I thought to myself. I had found it. The padlock on my side of the door was easy enough to pick. I opened the door to find a pretty grisly sight. 2 young adults were hanging from the ceiling, dead. Their hands and feet were not bound and showed no signs of struggle. They had died willingly. Sad. This was indeed the family's 2 kids. They had been defiled, both pre and post mortem. Are you getting all this? I asked Reed. Yes, she said. Are you okay? I asked. I'm okay. You were right. I'm glad you warned me that this was probably what we would find, she said. How's the camera recording? I asked. It's clear. Signal still strong, Reed replied. It was important to document all of this. The authorities would never prosecute me if I had this filmed. They wouldn't risk the embarrassment of it happening right under their noses. I pulled some industrial-strength thread locker from my pocket and put a few drops on the door hinges to make sure it stayed open. I didn't want to be shut inside. I continued into the next room to find a bedroom set up for what would presumably be 2 people, a boy and a girl. There were chains on the beds. There was no one here, however. I remember when I had taken her out of a similar dungeon. She grabbed onto me and held on so tight that she tore my shirt. It took 2 hours before she would let go. When she finally loosened her grip, she fell asleep from exhaustion. I then tucked her into bed, along with my Doberman pincer. I documented everything there and left hurriedly. There was nothing I could do for the deceased. As I was leaving, Reed was in the back. She dialed 911 on a burner phone. "What's your emergency?" asked the operator. "I would like to report a homicide," she said and gave the address. "There are 2 sets of human remains hidden in one of the closets." She finished. Then she immediately hung up. They could clean up this mess. They would have to now that there was a 911 call about it. "My name is Harold Decker. I'm a bounty hunter. I specialize in cult leaders who are wanted dead or alive. I am very good at it.